I was 20 minutes late to my brother's wedding rehearsal dinner, and the first thing his wife said to me was, "Oh, we thought you weren't coming. Did you even know there was a dress code?" I was wearing a blazer, a perfectly normal navy blazers over dark jeans. I had come straight from the hospital after a 14-hour shift, changed in the parking garage of the venue, and honestly felt pretty good about how fast I pulled myself together. But my sister-in-law, she had this way of looking at people that made you feel like you were something she'd stepped on. She did the slow scan, head to toe, then smiled and said, "You look tired, sweetie." My brother laughed, not meanly, exactly, more like he'd been trained to laugh at her jokes. I sat down at the far end of the table. I ordered water. I smiled at my parents, who were doing that thing they always do at family events, performing happiness so hard it became its own kind of exhaustion. My dad kept reaching over to pat my hand. My mom talked about the centerpieces. My sister-in-law spent most of the dinner talking about their new house, the square footage, the neighborhood, the school district, even though they didn't have kids yet. She talked about it the way people talk about things when they want you to understand that you'll never have them. "What is it you do again?" she asked me at some point, turning toward me with that same bright practiced smile. Like it was a genuine question, like she hadn't been told 17 times. "I'm a hospitalist," I said. "I work nights mostly at St. Catherine's." "Right, right." She nodded slowly. "So like, general medicine, not a surgeon or anything?" "No. Not a surgeon." "That's fine," she said, and turned back to my brother. "So as I was saying about the master bath renovation," I didn't say anything. What was there to say? She'd been like this since the first time my brother brought her home for Thanksgiving 3 years ago. Every conversation was a tiny contest she needed to win. Every family gathering a performance she needed to headline. I'd tried to like her. I genuinely had. I'd brought her flowers the first time I came to their apartment. I'd helped address wedding invitations when she was overwhelmed. I'd sat with her for 2 hours at Christmas listening to her explain why their neighborhood was better than the one my parents lived in. But I was tired. 14-hour tired. And when you're that tired, you stop working so hard to be liked by people who have decided not to like you. The dinner went on. Someone made a toast. My brother looked happy, genuinely happy, and I loved him enough to hold on to that. We grew up close. He's 4 years older than me, and he used to drive me to swim practice at 5 in the morning and never once complained. When I got into medical school, he cried, "He is a good person and he just has terrible taste in women." I left before dessert. I had to be back at the hospital by 6 the next morning, and the valet was taking forever, and I just wanted to be in my car, driving, with the windows down and no one talking at me. When I hugged my brother goodnight, he squeezed me tight and said, "I'm glad you're here." I believed him. His wife air-kissed my cheek and said, "Don't work too hard," in a tone that suggested she was absolutely certain I wouldn't. I should probably tell you something about what my life actually looks like, since none of my family seemed to know. I'm 31. I've been working at St. Catherine's for 4 years, but 18 months ago, I was approached by a medical technology company called Veritas Health Systems about a consulting opportunity. They were building a clinical decision support platform, essentially software that helps hospitalists like me make faster, more accurate decisions at the bedside. They wanted someone who actually worked nights, who knew what it felt like to manage 12 patients at once at 2 in the morning on 3 hours of sleep. Someone who could tell them what the tool needed to do in the real world versus what looked good in a boardroom. I said yes. I worked with their engineers on weekends. I flew to Seattle twice. I gave them feedback that apparently turned out to be foundational to the product's design, because 6 months later they offered me an equity stake seat on their medical advisory board. Then they got acquired. The acquisition was announced quietly. These things usually are, but the number was significant. Significant enough that my equity stake became something I needed to call an accountant about. I didn't tell my family because I genuinely didn't know how to bring it up. "Hey, so I own a piece of a company that just got acquired for." No, there's no natural way to say that at dinner, and then passed, and it felt weirder to say it late than it had at the beginning. So I just didn't. I kept going to work. I kept renting my apartment in Brookside. I drove the same Subaru I'd bought in residency. The money was sitting in accounts I barely looked at because I didn't know what I wanted to do with it yet. I was still figuring that part out. My family thought I was fine. Like, fine. Like a person who had made a respectable but not exciting choice, who was getting by, who was busy but not important. My sister-in-law's version of me was a tired woman in a blazer who couldn't afford to miss a shift, and I let her have that version because correcting her felt like more energy than she was worth. I should have told them sooner. I know that. The comment section of my life would have a lot to say about that. The wedding was 3 weeks later. It was beautiful, actually. My brother cried when she walked down the aisle, and I decided in that moment to just be happy for him, to let the day be what it was. I wore a green dress I'd bought specifically, and I actually felt like myself in it, which is not always a given at family events. The reception was at a venue outside the city. There was a live band, an open bar, the kind of floral arrangements that cost more than my first month's rent in med school. My sister-in-law had planned every detail with the focused intensity of someone who has watched too many wedding content creators. It was beautiful. I told her so. She said, I know. I sat with my parents and my cousins and drank champagne and danced badly to songs from the 90s. For a while, it was actually fun. My dad kept trying to do the running man. My mom was laughing so hard she was crying. My brother spun me around the dance floor and said, I'm sorry she's difficult sometimes, and I said, don't worry about it, and I meant it. Then the toasts happened. My sister-in-law's maid of honor went first, then her dad. Then my brother said something sweet and unrehearsed that made everyone tear up. Then my sister-in-law's mother leaned into the microphone and said, we are so blessed to be gaining such a wonderful family, and smiled at my parents. And then my sister-in-law took the mic for a moment, which is not really a traditional thing but also very on brand for her, and said something like, I just want to say how much it means to have people here who truly support us. People who show up, people who… And here she paused, and I would swear she looked directly at me. Invest in this relationship. It was nothing, technically, it was a feeling. But my mom reached over and squeezed my hand under the table, and I knew she'd felt it too. Later, when the dancing had slowed and people were standing in small clusters with their drinks, my sister-in-law's older brother found me near the bar. His name is Beckett. He's maybe 38, the kind of guy who wears expensive watches and talks about his portfolio the way other people talk about their kids. We'd met twice before, briefly at a holiday thing and then again at the engagement party, and both times he'd been perfectly polite in a way that managed to communicate total indifference. That night, he was different. He came over with intention. He asked how I was doing, asked about the hospital, and this surprised me, whether I'd been following the Veritas acquisition news. I kept my face neutral. A little, I said. Interesting deal, he said. He swirled his drink. I have a friend who was pitching them before the acquisition, and you know anyone over there? I looked at him. I know some people, I said. He nodded slowly. Smart space, digital health infrastructure. There's a lot of opportunity if you're in the right room. He tilted his head. What do you do, exactly? You're a doctor? Hospitalist, I said. Right. That word again. That same slightly diminishing right. So mostly clinical work. Nights and stuff. I agreed. He laughed. I'm raising a fund right now, actually. Early stage, focused on health tech, having trouble getting the right medical advisors. People who actually know the clinical side, not just the business side. He glanced around the room, then back at me. Do you know anyone who might be interested? Good compensation? Some equity? What size fund? I asked. He blinked. We're targeting 60 million to start, potentially more depending on LP interest. And you're having trouble finding clinical advisors? The good ones are hard to pin down, he said. Everyone's busy. I nodded. I could feel something very quiet happening inside me. Not satisfaction exactly, not yet. More like watching a door I hadn't opened in a while and remembering I had the key. Send me your deck, I said. I handed him my card, The one from Veritas, with my advisory board title on it. He looked at it, his expression shifted. Not dramatically, but I saw it. That recalibration that happens when someone realizes they've been talking to the wrong version of you this whole time. This is you? He said. That's me, I said. Send me the deck. I'll take a look. I got another drink. I went to find my parents. My dad asked me to dance, and I said yes. The deck arrived Monday morning. I read it on my lunch break, eating a sad vending machine sandwich in the break room at the hospital, and it was fine. Genuinely fine. Not great. The clinical strategy was thin in places, and some of the assumptions about patient data infrastructure were optimistic to the point of being misleading. But the core thesis wasn't wrong, and there were 2 companies in the proposed portfolio I actually thought had something real. I sent back 3 pages of notes. Not as a favor, as a professional assessment because what I've been asked for, and that's how I do things. He called me the next day. These notes, he said. This is exactly what I've been missing. How are you not? He stopped himself. How am I not what? I asked. I mean, you're a hospitalist. You work nights. I didn't realize you were also what? Silence. Involved in this space. I've been involved in this space for a while, I said pleasantly. He asked if we could meet. I said I was free Thursday afternoon. He asked if I wanted to come to his office. I said sure. Have your assistant send me the address, he said. Of course, absolutely, in a voice that was very different from the voice that had said nights and stuff at the wedding. I told my colleague about it that afternoon, mostly because I needed someone to be quietly amused with me. She listened to the whole thing with her eyebrows gradually rising and then said, So your sister-in-law's brother wanted to pick your brain and he didn't know who you were? He thought I was the charity case sister-in-law, I said, and now he wants to meet Thursday. She shook her head. You should have told your family, she said. I know. Like months ago. I know. You're so weird, she said, and handed me half her granola bar. Thursday came. His office was in a glass building downtown that tried very hard to look effortlessly cool. The receptionist was younger than my stethoscope. I was shown into a conference room with a view of the river and offered coffee I didn't need. Beckett came in wearing a suit this time, which he hadn't been doing at the wedding when I was just the tired hospitalist sister-in-law who'd arrived in a blazer. He shook my hand like he was meeting me for the first time, which in a way he was. He laid out the fund in more detail. The LP structure, the investment thesis, the timeline. He talked about needing a clinical advisor who could evaluate companies not just from a market perspective, but from a will this actually work in a hospital perspective. He said the right advisor with the right equity stake and the right role could shape how the entire fund approached health tech. What role did you have in the Veritas deal? He asked. I told him plainly. The consulting engagement, the advisory board, the equity, the acquisition. I said it the way I would have said it 6 months ago if I'd known how to bring it up over dinner. Just facts, just the truth. He was quiet for a moment. So when we talked at the wedding, you asked if I knew anyone in the space, I said. I said I knew some people. He rubbed his jaw. I didn't ask the right question. No, I agreed. You didn't. To his credit, he laughed. It was a real laugh. Okay, he said. I deserve that. We spent another hour going through his portfolio companies. I gave him my honest read on each one, which were solutions looking for problems, which were building on assumptions that would collapse the moment they hit an actual hospital workflow. He took notes. He pushed back on a few things, and I pushed back on his pushback, and by the end we were having a genuinely good conversation, the kind that happens when 2 people are actually talking about the same thing from different angles. Before I left, he said, I want to bring this to my partners. Would you be open to a formal advisory role? Send me a term sheet, I said. I'll have my attorney look at it. He walked me to the elevator. He said, I have to ask, does my sister know? Know what? What you do, who you are, all of this. I thought about the rehearsal dinner, the slow scan, don't work too hard, the toast that wasn't quite a toast. She knows I'm a doctor, I said. She knows I work nights. He shook his head slowly. The elevator came. I stepped in. The term sheet arrived the following Tuesday. It was reasonable, Better than reasonable, actually. My attorney said it was a fair offer for an early-stage advisory role and that I could negotiate 2 of the clauses without losing goodwill. We did. Beckett agreed to the revisions within 48 hours. I signed it on a Friday afternoon, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the window open because it was finally warm enough to do that. I didn't call anyone to celebrate. I thought about it. I sat there for a minute trying to figure out who I would even tell and what I would say, and realized that the main emotion I was feeling wasn't triumph. It was something smaller and more private. Like finishing a long chapter in a book and just sitting there for a second before you turn the page. My brother called me that weekend, just to check in. We do that, we text a lot, but we call on Sundays sometimes, no reason, just to talk about nothing. He asked about work. I asked about the honeymoon. He said Lisbon was perfect and that his wife had cried at a photo performance, and he'd never seen her that open before, and it had made him love her differently. I let that sit with me for a moment. Because that's real, isn't it? People are more than the versions they show you when they're performing. She had a version I'd never seen. He saw it. That meant something. Hey, I said. There's some stuff I should have told you a while ago. He waited. I told him. All of it. The consulting work, the advisory board, Veritas, the acquisition, Thursday's meeting, the signed term sheet. I talked for maybe 15 minutes, and when I was done, there was a long pause on his end. How long has this been going on? He said. About 18 months, I said. The acquisition closed 8 months ago. 8 months. I know, why didn't you? He stopped. You know what? It doesn't matter. Are you okay? Are you happy? That question, that specific question, that order is why I still have a good relationship with my brother. Yeah, I said. I am, then good, he said. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. I believed him. I've always believed him on that. He paused again. Does Annalise know? Analyze. His wife, her brother knows now, I said. Another pause, longer this time. Oh, he said. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's going to be a whole thing, he said. Probably, I said. Did she ever? He didn't finish the sentence. It's okay, I said. She didn't know. She was just working with what she had. That's the thing I've come back to a lot since then. She didn't know who I was. She made a picture of me out of the pieces I gave her, the late arrivals, the tired eyes, the deflections when people asked about my life, and she filled in the rest with assumptions. I'd handed her the wrong information and she'd used it. That's on me too. I'm not saying she wasn't unkind. She was, in her way, in those small, accumulated ways that are hard to point to directly. But unkind and wrong aren't always the same thing, and I've been both in my life. Annalise texted me the following Wednesday, a long text, longer than she'd ever sent me before. She said Beckett had told her. She said she didn't know what to say. She said she felt embarrassed, and that she wasn't always sure how to talk to me, and that she thought she used the word intimidating, which surprised me enough that I read it twice. She asked if we could get coffee sometime. Just the two of us. I thought about it for a whole day. I said yes. We met at a place near the hospital on a Thursday morning. She got there before I did, which I hadn't expected. She had her hands wrapped around a latte and she looked, for the first time since I'd known her, like she wasn't performing anything. She said, I've been replaying every conversation we've had and I think I was pretty awful sometimes. I said, you weren't always awful. She laughed, a real one, short and surprised. That's a very specific compliment. I can work with specific, I said. We talked for almost 2 hours. About her brother, about my brother, about how strange it is to marry into a family and suddenly have all these built-in relationships you didn't choose. She told me she grew up with no money and worked very hard to not look like it, and that sometimes that came out sideways. I told her I grew up in a family where being competent wasn't always enough to be seen and that sometimes I disappeared before people could dismiss me. She was quiet when I said that. Then she said, I didn't see you right. No, I said. You didn't. I'd like to try again, she said. I looked at her. This version of her, the one who showed up early and kept her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee like she needed something to hold on to. Okay, I said. I don't know how this story ends. I mean, I know what happened, the advisory role, the meetings, the term sheet, the coffee. I know those facts, but the rest of it is still unfolding in the way that real things line.
And
My brother is happy. Annalise and I are something. Not close, not yet, but something more honest than we were. Her brother and I are building a working relationship that I think will be good. My parents still don't entirely understand what I do, and my dad still pats my hand at dinner. And that, actually, I don't mind at all. I kept working nights at St. Catherine's. I'm still there. Because that's who I am. That's the version of me that was there before the acquisition, before the term sheet, before any of it. The tired woman in the blazer is still me. She's just not the whole picture. I wish I'd shown people the whole picture sooner, not to prove anything, just because holding it alone got heavier than I realized. And the people who love you deserve the truth of you, even when the truth is complicated, even when you're still figuring it out yourself. I'm still figuring it out, but for the first time in a long time, I'm doing it out loud.